What is going on, everybody? I am Rob Westerman the third of GBP Daily, and thank you for tuning in to, you guessed it, the Rob Westerman Show. I am joined tonight by my man Clayton from Packers Total Access. Clayton, how you doing, man?
Man, I couldn't be better, Rob. I just want to say thanks for the invite. It's always a blast to chat with you. I know you came on my show some time ago, and like I was telling everybody on my show, man, I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. When I first got on Twitter, I was dumped into social media as a Packer fan, and I looked around and went, "This is wild." And Rob was one of the few people that I first chatted with. And I'm like, okay, this guy seems stable. I'm going to try to talk to him a little bit. So I really appreciate the invite, man, and excited to get on here and talk a little Packers with you, bro.
Hey, it's my pleasure, man. It's kind of like having a celeb on here. You brought your whole crew over from Packers Total Access. Everyone's spamming the chat. I'm loving it. I'm glad you were able to make it work. I know you just got done with your nightly show at 7:00 and a little early for me, so I appreciate that. And also the guys over with you guys for tonight's show. Thanks for cutting it short. I appreciate it. So,
No problem.
Clayton, before we get rolling, I know just about everybody knows who you are and what you bring to the table, right? But for the few that don't, could you give us a little breakdown who you are, the type of content you bring to the table, when your shows happen, and everything in between?
Yeah, I mean, if you're prepared to lose some credibility, we can do that right off the bat. But no,
You're at the right place, man. You're at the right place.
Now we're over at Packer Fan Total Access. Packers Total Access is the show, and we've been doing podcasting now under the Packernet podcast umbrella, a member of the Packernet podcast family, I should say, with Ryan Schlip for over 2 years now. And really, what we create is just daily content where the overall goal, honestly, Rob, is we want to try to approach everything from the mindset of what is the Packers front office focused on right now? Because sometimes you get kind of into the dead part of the off season and people are like, there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to talk about. Well, if you really kind of put yourself in the mindset of the front office, there's always stuff to be done. So you're prepping for the next stage, whether it's, free agency, whether it's the draft. And then of course, this time of year, it's training camp, but there's also a couple of contracts that need to get done. So it's all right, how serious are they about getting the contracts done? What will the market value be on that type of stuff? So we really try to deep dive things from that perspective. Now, we say try because I'm telling you, man, the crew we got, it goes off the rails quick. And you are not going to get professionalism when you hop over to our channel. And really, Packer Fan Total Access is exactly what it sounds like. We're trying to give you total access with the Packers from every angle, but at the same time, we're just a bunch of fans that come together and talk ball. There's no experts. There's no professionals. There's no, hey, you need to try to sound like this or present yourself a certain way. We accept everybody for the way they are as long as they're respectful to each other, and we just have a blast talk ball, man. That's really it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I appreciated back in the day when I was on your show with Matt. I kind of went in thinking, all right, I kind of got to do a little research here and make sure I'm on top of my game as far as little things and whatnot. But yeah, you guys welcomed me with open arms, and it kind of just allowed me to just chill and hang out and chat football, which, I mean, that's just all we're trying to do, right? We're just trying to hang out, talk some Packers football, anything related Packers. I'm not a film guru. I know you are. If you bring up any play, anything related, I'm sure I can remember it and talk about it with you. But that's kind of where I think about, okay, well, that's not necessarily my lane. I'm just here to chat. I'm a fan, just like everybody else. Like you said, I'm not an expert. We don't have inside source. I don't have inside sources, I should say. And yeah, just like you said, be yourself,
Yeah, absolutely, man. And we break down some tape throughout the year. We have segments that we call Chalk Talk. And what we try to do is after each game, whether it's a win or a loss, that's the other thing. We always do a live post-game show, win or loss. We always try to do a Chalk Talk episode about 3 days after where we can go through and find the key plays of the game, not just the highlights, but hey, what didn't make the highlight reel might be this 3rd and 3 that got stopped, and it wasn't this exciting play, but really it played a role in the outcome of the game. So we get into breaking down the tape to a certain extent. And really, it's just stuff that we've kind of learned together. And like I always tell everybody, I put the disclaimer out here. Here's what we're seeing. If you guys disagree, put it in the chat. And so we do a
Yeah.
little bit of tape breakdown, but definitely I'm not coming from a coaching background or anything like that. That's for sure. So
you would have fooled me, Clayton. I tell you that much. That's interesting because every game there's plays that, man, I think to myself, okay, that's going to come back to get us, or that's huge as
right,
far as going on to win this game potentially. And half the time, even myself, I forget about those if we end up winning or losing, especially if there's a big play or a big penalty towards the end of the game. Then it's like, okay, well, that's all we're focused on. Well, and actually, there's 3, 4, 5, 6 plays, as we know, from the 2014 NFC Championship game that went not our way
right.
and severely impacted the outcome of the game. Sorry to bring that up, but yeah, that's a good and unique type of content that I haven't seen out there that I think is pretty important.
It is, man, because we always say it's important to understand what happened and why did it happen. And we're not like revolutionizing anything. These are things that I've heard people in and around the game their entire life talk about, like your Michael Lombardi's, who spent, his entire life in professional football studying under Bill Walsh and obviously Al Davis when he was with the Raiders, and of course Bill Belichick and Super Bowl rings they got together in New England. They go back to Cleveland. You got people like that. It's audio books and books that I've read on Bill Walsh and how he constructs a roster and the culture within the building.
Right.
All that different stuff matters. It really does. And we try to shine a little bit of light on that. But at the same time, we want to have a good time too. So I don't want it to just be boring, monotone, and that's where Jacob, Emilio, and Tim do really good. Tim is like the mature adult on our podcast.
Yep.
He reins us in, every now and again. Although he is the mastermind on the soundboard, creating most of the chaos, he plays it off really well. And of course, Jacob and Emilio, that's just like the two guys that you're having a Osco beer with watching the game. It's just it's a lot of fun. But yeah, just trying to look at it from every angle. That's the big thing. And what's really cool is when you do that as a podcaster, you have to hold yourself accountable to putting content out on a regular basis. And the byproduct of that is you learn so much more about the game from your listeners. That's the big thing.
Right.
It irks me when I hear some people cover the sport and it's like they're up here talking down to their listeners, and it's like, nah, man, it ain't like that at all. If they hear my accent and they know it ain't like that, I can't fool anybody. So it's the way that works.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with any team, any sort of coverage, there's going to be guys like that. No names being named here, but yeah, there's a few that aren't very inclusive, which is fine. That's how they roll. It doesn't mean I don't enjoy their perspective or their content. It's just it's not how we roll,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
we are not on a pedestal over here.
I like it.
All right, let's dive in, Clayton. We're 2 days into camp. I know the pads haven't come on yet, but outside of the Jordan Love situation, here's my question. Has anything stood out to you so far that kind of has caught your eye, whether it's with coaching or whether it's with the play on the field? Who's not practicing? Who is practicing? Anything stick out to you so far?
I think the big thing, obviously, that everybody's talking about outside of Jordan Love and the contract. I love that you steer the conversation away from that too, because we are all just we're so tired of it already, right?
Hey, don't you worry. We're going to get into that a little bit.
Okay, all right. It'll get done. I guarantee you that. But yeah, the big thing that stood out to me is everyone's excited about this new Jeff Hafley defense, and one thing that I really uncovered when I dove into the Jeff Hafley defense, you can look at it a multitude of ways. You can go back to his days with Ohio State where he spent 1 year and they had a phenomenal defense. You can go to his time in Boston College where they didn't have a whole lot of results. Or you can go back to his time in the NFL when he kind of coached under Robert Saleh. And you've heard Hafley talk, extensively in conversations and more specifically interviews where he said, my friends in the NFL. And I think what he's referring to there is Robert Saleh, is D'Amico Ryan's, people like that, because D'Amico kind of comes from that same tree, right? So what I like doing is diving into, okay, what is Robert Saleh doing with the Jets that's so effective? What kind of fronts do they show? How much man coverage are they actually playing? How much are they actually blitzing? And get a little bit better idea of what's actually to be expected this year. So that's the big thing is I think the Jeff Hafley defense, what exactly is it going to look like? And you mentioned camp already kicking off. Man, it sounded like today that defensive front pinned their ears back. And listen, it was Sean Clifford, Michael Pratt. I got you. But still, they went out there and they dominated today. And it seems like the defense early in camp always has the upper hand. It seems like every year it happens, but it's hard not to buy into the hype, man. And Javon Bullard, he is the rookie on my radar. I'm excited about Edgerrin Cooper, don't get me wrong, but Javon Bullard's one. It's like he seems like he's day one ready, man. He really does.
And he's a big dude. He hits.
Yes.
He hits hard. He's a big dude. Yeah, like you said, the defense today and yesterday, cooking. I mean, Rashawn Gary, 3 sacks and 4 plays. And like you said, I know it's Clifford back there. I know Zach Tom was kind of practicing on a limited basis, even though he did come off the POP list. But, man, and it kind of goes what you just said as well. The defense kind of always gets rolling first, and it takes the offense a while. And I know kind of, everybody starts to panic a little bit when the offense is doing push-ups 4 or 5 straight days.
Right.
Camp. Excuse me. But, yeah, with Jeff Hafley back there running the show, Rashawn Gary kind of revived here. He's had the full offseason to actually work on his craft as opposed to rehabbing. I think the hype for Rashawn Gary is fair. I've been seeing a lot of defensive player of the year predictions. I've been seeing a few sack record breaking predictions, and I know that might be a little out of the reach there, but man, I'm excited to watch him. I'm excited to watch Xavier McKinney. Just another leader. He was a captain over there in New York. You can't have too many leaders, especially on the defensive side, where we've kind of not necessarily struggled. I mean, I guess I could say we struggled in recent memory, but cannot have too many leaders over on that side of the ball.
No, especially at each level too, and that's what's so exciting. Like you've got Xavier McKinney at the safety level. Now, some would question Jair's leadership. I understand why they would question it. You can't deny his ability and natural talent that he's got. But you've got Xavier McKinney in the secondary room. At the linebacking room, you've got that's to me, this is kind of the question mark. You've got Quay Walker. You got now Edgerrin Cooper. And, of course, you got Isaiah McDuffie. I think Isaiah McDuffie is one of the unsung heroes on this team. But he is one that's going to bring a little bit of a leadership standpoint, I think. He played, if I remember correctly, 1 year under Jeff Hafley at Boston College. I think that's accurate. I heard many people talking about that. So he's probably a little bit familiar with Haf. And then at the defensive line is really where all the majority of the leadership is. So you've got X back there in the safety room, in the DB room, and then you've got Kenny Clark, new contract extension, obviously going to be here for at least another year, probably 2 years. Possibly all 3 if he continues to play at a high level. You got him in that defensive line room. Now you've got Kenny Clark. You've got Preston Smith, another one, man, that's just got all the leadership skills in the world. You won't find a single teammate to say anything bad about him. He just seems like one of those dudes that everybody respects and loves. Everything's coming together for the defense. It's just now schematically can we put it together? And it's funny too, because you're talking about all these veterans with leadership and Xavier McKinney being a captain in New York with the New York Giants and coming over to Green Bay. And then the Javon Bullard quote earlier, I'll read it real quick. This one really stood out to me early in the day. It got tweeted out by Matt Schneiden, I think at like 9:07 this morning, my time, here Eastern time. And he said Javon Bullard was asked yesterday how comfortable he is in the Packers defensive rookie safety started on day 1. And his answer was just phenomenal. He said, quote, "I ain't going to lie. I don't even like the word comfortable. No disrespect, but I don't really like that word, especially in this profession, because the second you get comfortable, somebody's got your job, and I don't even have a job yet." You watch him, and it's early in camp. You watch his tape at Georgia, even when he played the slot in 2022, and then in 2023 he's playing safety, and like you said, bringing the lumber. You watch him on the practice field; they're already running him with the ones for the most part, alongside Xavier McKinney. And his quote is, "I don't even have a job yet." Man, that dude's humble and hungry, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and that's the type of guy that kind of shapes out to be a fan favorite, coach's favorite. When you hear something like that, I saw LaFleur didn't know he even said that, and so when he was caught talking to somebody after practice, he had said, "Yeah, he said that." I mean, that gets me fired up. And like you said, when you get comfortable, you're already getting a step behind. If you're not evolving, it's like, well, you're falling behind. And yeah, like you said, starting out there with Xavier McKinney yesterday, I know Evan Williams kind of got some play here today. He had a pick against Clifford. I know there was a little wet out there, and no J Love, no protection. but can never complain about an interception, especially as a rookie. That's got to get you fired up. And especially in Evan's position where he was drafted, shortly behind Bullard. I'm sure, obviously they're on the same team, but I'm sure he's kind of got a little chip and I saw a quote from him after practice too. I've always thought that, where you get drafted doesn't always project how your career is going to turn out. And that mindset, along with Javon Bullard's, I mean, both those are just great and something you love to see. It seems like they're Packer dudes.
Yeah. And that's one thing that you could tell that Goody and all the scouts and the whole front office, they spend a ton of time. You hear a Packer player, or they are a Packer. And some people roll their eyes and so this cliche that it's like the Packer way, kind of like the old Patriot way, but it's true.
Right.
Like they don't bring guys into this looking for people that are cut from the same cloth. And those guys that come in and usually they have a strong foundation, around them personally. Like Jordan Love is the perfect example of that. And I know we're talking defense, but you talk about a guy who's well-grounded and his parents raised him right. Like those are the type of people, type of players that the Packers look for, man. Because when they come in, I was listening to a pod earlier today, and I'm a podcast junkie. It was the GM shuffle with Michael Lombardi and Femi Abemefe, and they had, and his name's escaping me, Veach, right? The general manager, I think it is, for the Kansas City Chiefs. 90% of the conversation was culture and how Andy Reid protects that culture and how it's one of the most important things. You can, Michael Lombardi has a quote that it's a Bill Belichick quote that he uses all the time. He says, we're building a team. We're not collecting talent. And sometimes when I tweet that out, people go, the heck, we ain't collecting talent. I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but you can have all the talent in the world. But if you've got a bunch of me guys and a bunch of guys that's not going to play together as a collective unit, because that's what makes these schemes go.
Right.
It's not a popular opinion, Rob, but when I watched that defense and I turned on the tape last year, I didn't see a flawed scheme. I seen guys that weren't playing together, and I seen guys that weren't performing at an entry level, like Matt LaFleur said, on simple things like country quarter spot drop, and just simple stuff that's like, this is day one install stuff, and they're not doing it. I don't think that they're not smart enough to do it. I think they just wasn't bought in. They wasn't playing for each other. If anything, bringing in Hafley is going to kind of galvanize this group. And you add in the rookies, like you said, with Evan Williams. I think it was Evan Williams had, like you said, the interception. Anthony Johnson Jr. came alive today, had an interception as well. We haven't even seen Katano Ladapo with the toe injury, and that's another one that's going to bring a ton of energy. So, I think that culture is just absolutely huge, man.
Yeah. This defense especially is kind of, it's like an onion. You're peeling back the layers every single day. Yesterday we got Javon Bullard. Today we got Evan Williams. And like you said with Kadano Oladapo, we haven't even got a chance to see him. So the potential of the whole entire group as a whole, and I think it was Xavier McKinney talking about how just the defense is fired up. Not only the first group, but the second and third groups. They've been attacking the ball. That seems to kind of be the motto under Jeff Hafley here the last month or so, and especially right at the beginning of OTAs. Was like, all right, we're going to attack. And with the D-line kind of getting after it, and you've got a stable group, Jair, Stokes, in my opinion, who if I had to guess, will probably win that other cornerback job, but it's still up for grabs for a reason. And then whoever starts next to Xavier, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams, Anthony Johnson Jr., Oladapo, or if they kind of have a little swinging gate of folks coming in and out, it's going to be exciting to watch. I think by the end of the year, or even later in the season, I think that safety room is probably going to be one of the more stable, or defensive back rooms, going to be more stable groups of our whole entire team, which is comforting,
Yeah, and one name you didn't mention that I'm a big fan of, he doesn't get talked about a lot, is Corey Ballantyne. When you go back and watch the tape last year on Corey, I feel like there's an argument there to be made that Corey was the second best cornerback on the team last year. I think he had the second lowest passer rating when targeted. He may have had the best passer rating when targeted. If you guys want to see an awesome game, go watch the Packers and the Minnesota Vikings on New Year's Eve and watch Corey Ballantyne cover Justin Jefferson. And he got an interception there in the first quarter that completely controlled the momentum of the game. There was multiple times they tried to go to Jefferson deep, and Ballantyne was draped over him. That's just a guy that, I think he's 29 years old. I'm not saying he's going to be here for 5 years, but man, if you if you get in a pinch and injuries do, rear their ugly head again, if this defensive front is getting to the quarterback like it's looking like they're going to be able to, you don't have to have great coverage on the back end. And I think Corey Ballantyne is more than capable of playing that outside corner position. Obviously, I have never seen him in the slot, but along the boundary there and along the outside, like last year, that game against the Vikings, I believe Jair was hurt that game. So he played the right cornerback position from the defense's perspective, the left side from the offense's perspective, or what we say, the Madden cam, right? So he was on that left side and most of the time covering kind of that boundary receiver. Did a phenomenal job. So I think Corey Ballantyne, I'm not saying he should start over Stokes. I am simply saying, though, if Stokes goes down with an injury or Jair does, I feel pretty good about Ballantyne coming in.
Yeah, those are good points, and kind of just goes to show there's battles going around at every spot.
Yeah.
Cornerback, safety, linebacker 2, slot. I mean, it's just kind of all up for grabs, and I know it's early, but it's always fun to talk hypotheticals. Ron hops in here and says, anxious to see if King makes any headway in the cornerback room. And that's another name I forgot to mention. Kalen King, 7th round draft pick. Last year, he was projected to go in the 1st round, if I'm correct.
That's correct, man.
Basically,
if we had ran the 2024 draft immediately following the 2023 season, Kalen King was projected to be the top cornerback drafted. That's how good he was.
Yeah.
And of course he had a down year, but yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Rob. That dude, if he returns to 2022 form, and Goody, that's one of the things that we've uncovered in our draft analysis when we talk about total access and us trying to do what, as soon as the season's over, we try to dive right into the draft analysis and say, okay, what are they scouting on these players? Yep. Goody really likes to go back a year. Jaden Reed snuck up on everybody. When they drafted Jaden Reed, it's like, who? I remember me looking at my board when me and Ryan were live on our draft show, like, why did they take Jaden Reed over Jalen Hyatt and all these other guys? And then you go back, and sure enough, we went back 1 year to the 2021 tape, and it's like, this dude was phenomenal. He had a down year. So Goody's willing to go back a couple years, and you've seen that with Kalen King. Obviously, he wasn't taken in the 2nd round like Jaden Reed was, but still they took a shot at him in the 7th round. And it sounds like he's got a chip on his shoulder. Rob, you can't put a price tag on that when someone's highly motivated because they've been passed up on. These dudes have ego, and rightfully so, man.
Yeah, and that ego is backed up by, man, can you imagine the contract difference from the 1st round last year to now 7th round this year? And just the disappointment. Obviously, he's more disappointed than anybody on how things went, maybe how the year went. And at the end of day 3, he's just hoping to get drafted.
Yep.
And thankfully, Brian made the call. And it seems like, according to Sauce Gardner and a couple other NFL guys, that he was a steal. So, I mean, if Sauce Gardner says he's a good player, I mean, who am I to argue with his opinion? So, all right, let's switch gears here. I know we brought up J Love earlier. I haven't got to chat about it a whole lot, so I wanna kind of ask you for a little prediction here. When do you think J Love will sign? Who's to blame on why it's taken so long? I know he was eligible for a contract back in May. What's that? 2.5 months. You'd think they would be doing a little bit of negotiating right after the 49er game. That hot run he kind of led the Packers on. And then maybe come May, they could just wrap this thing up, especially before these other quarterbacks got paid this offseason. Probably would have helped out the Packers. Jordan Love would have been locked up. This kind of wouldn't have been a thing. And now we're in day 2 of training camp. It still isn't wrapped up. It seems like from what everyone's saying, it's pretty close. But I'm at the point now where it's like, well, I'm just going to have to wait and see. And that's all we can really do. When do you think it'll get done? Who's stalling? Which side's stalling? Because I know somebody is to try and get something they want.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I put a poll question out on my Twitter account for this very reason, because I wanted to see what Packer fans thought. And, you go to Twitter sometimes, or X, whatever you want to call it. You go over there sometimes and you get kind of the outrageous responses. We've done a real good job of cleaning that up on our account to where if someone continuously kind of comes up with a comment or a hot take, I just try to ignore them, because it's like I want to talk ball. I don't want to be in here, trying to get hot takes and argue on Twitter. But I put the poll question out there like, hey, who would you blame, right? I said, with Packers quarterback Jordan Love sitting out training camp until he gets his new contract, where do you stand on the situation? We have 462 votes, so it was a pretty decent sample size. I put Goody is being cheap, Jordan is asking too much, or no fault, it's just business. 83.5%, 83, Rob, percent said no fault, just business. So I was so proud of Packer fans that they were being level-headed. Now, you're asking me personally, we were really, really vocal on our show back in May. It was like, we need to get this contract done before the rest of these drop because, listen, he's got Mulugeta working this deal. Right. Mulugeta does not play. You think Jordan Love's good on a football field, you should see Mulugeta as an agent. That dude, he is the modern day. He's not Jerry Maguire. He's the other dude, right? You know, Jerry Maguire, if you ever seen that movie, he kind of grew a heart and got soft and couldn't negotiate anymore. This dude does not play. Now, they should have been out in front of it. And what I said back in May, Rob, was like, either you think he's the guy or you don't. If you think he's the guy, get him the contract now because it's only going to go up. Price is going to go up. They waited. Jared Goff gets his deal. Guess what? Mulugeta calls him up and goes, hey, price just went up. And then all of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence gets his. Hey, guess what? Price just went up. That's what's going on. It really is. And so if you had to hold my feet to the fire and say you got to blame somebody, I do blame the front office because it's like you either think he's the guy or you don't. Everything Goody has said, he's our franchise quarterback, right? The other comment he made, they asked him at the end of the season, when did you know he was the guy? And they said 2019. Now, I think there's a little bit. First half of last year, if you asked him that, he wasn't saying that, right? But with that being said, that's where the problem lies for me. So I would put more blame on Goody. Jordan's got to protect himself, man. Like, if he goes out there and he gets hurt and he doesn't have that big contract, and now he's got to sign on a year-to-year basis to prove it again and prove that he's healthy, man, that's a tough look. So that's kind of how I see the whole negotiation. Now, as far as the prediction, I don't like to predict things, but if I had to guess, I would say it's going to get done within a week. It sounds like I think they are close, but what you're probably getting into now is, and I think it was Tauscher and Bulaga was talking about this on Wildy and Tausch, like they're probably okay at the number of him. The Packers are okay at him becoming the highest paid quarterback on an average basis. Right. But they're probably trying to work out as the guarantee and more specifically that game-to-game basis because they have a unique way that they structure contracts in Green Bay, and I don't fully understand it. I'm not a cap guru, nor do I claim to be one. But they like to structure things in a way where they can do a roster bonus where it's a game-to-game basis where you're guaranteed this money, and that's why some people say practical guarantee versus actual guarantee. And if you get hurt and you're going to miss a game, well, guess what? You don't get paid that week, essentially is how it works for that certain portion of your contract. So I think the hang-up is in that aspect. The Packers probably thought, okay, yeah, we can make him the highest average quarterback, salary, but we're going to have a little bit more control with guaranteed money. And Mulugeta's going, no, you ain't. So again, in no way, shape, or form is this slander to Goody. Is it slander to Jordan Love? But man, I'll tell you what, Jordan Love, like Jacob said on the show tonight on our show on PTA, Jordan Love standing out there in the pouring rain with his teammates and being there at the meetings and everything. The only thing he's not partaking in is in things that might get him hurt. To me, if anything, he is continuing to reach across the fence and like, hey, look, I'm trying to do what's right here because that's the other thing. Last year, Rob, I know it's a long-winded answer, but it's a hot-button topic. Last year, I was very vocal saying Jordan Love did them one heck of a favor signing that 2-year deal because he could have been like, nope, I want the 5th-year option or I want a franchise tag or I want to test the market. He could have done that. And I'm telling you, man, there were a lot of people that were high on him. So, like many people say, he could start on probably 20 teams in the league right now as a quarterback. Like there are 20 teams that would probably say, yeah, we'll trade for him, right? Yeah. So he did them a favor with that contract that was far less than what the market was warranting. So what I keep finding here is Jordan's doing everything right, and the Packers are being just a little bit stingy. And I love my Green Bay Packers, and Goody is he's a heck of a businessman. There's
I
no doubt
love
about
Goody.
it. He and Russ Ball, they know what they're doing. But let's get this thing done, man. You basically said, okay, you've sat for this long. Well, that was the Packers' fault that he sat that long. They drafted
Right.
him behind Aaron Rodgers. That had nothing to do with Jordan. And then he goes out and they're like, okay, well, show us what you can do. They said last year the fifth-year option was too expensive for someone who hasn't played that much. He goes out in the second half of the season and he's the best quarterback in football. That's the reality. So it's like he's done everything you asked him to do, and he's still being nice and still playing nice, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, but I think within 7 games it's done.
No, I completely agree. That's where I'm at too. He's done the Packers a lot of favors, and he's continuing to. Like you said, showing up to practice today, all he's not doing is throwing the 20, 25 passes.
Right.
Well, I understand if you miss one of those days like yesterday, not a big deal. If you miss today, there's probably 20, 40 passes, 50 passes at most that you're missing. Now, if we get in here later in the week and it's Thursday, it's Friday, it's going into next week, and all those days of passes and reps with the young guys, we're still the youngest team in the NFL. So every rep, as you and everybody else know, isn't that crazy? Every rep is so valuable that if we start adding up these days with no throws, no handoffs, no anything, then I'll start getting concerned. But as of right now, I'm not too worried. Everything seems to be pointing like they're pretty close. But I just saw a tweet from Robert Griffin III. This is kind of interesting. Kind of throws in a name that hasn't really been mentioned a whole lot, at least on the Jordan Love level, just because he hasn't really played as well and or won a playoff game. Robert Griffin III posted, anyone who says Jordan Love should be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL after 1 year of production, but has a different feeling about Tua Tagovailoa after 2 years of production is being dishonest and has ulterior motives. Tua, the last 2 seasons, has been top 5 in every major quarterback stat. Now, I find that interesting because I'm not going to disagree with him because I don't dislike the Dolphins. I enjoy watching them on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays. They've never been a rival. They got a fun team over there. And I can't sit here and pretend like I know for a fact Tua has been top 5 in every major quarterback stat. But if he has, like Robert's saying, he's kind of been flying under the radar here. And I know that's probably mainly because they haven't won any playoff games.
Yeah, right. And the big thing too that you got to take into consideration, you don't have to, but many people do, is the system they're in. They run an RPO heavy system over there with Mike McDaniel. So the way it works is the ball's coming out extremely fast. Also, they went and got who I think is the best wide receiver in the league in Tyreek Hill. So he's got playmakers around him. I mean, they probably got the best 1-2 punch at wide receiver in the entire league. You got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So you kind of take those things in consideration. I could see how people would push back on that take. But what Robert Griffin III said, I agree with.
Yeah.
Everything you've seen from Tua, he's played really well. And if the argument is, well, you got a good team around you, it's okay, so I should be penalized because y'all build a good team. What are we even talking about here? So I think that's the other thing too. One of the things that happened, remember the rumors, I think they actually got in trouble. They might have got fined or penalized for it, that the Dolphins were trying to recruit Tom Brady. You remember they had Tua on the team when they did that. So, actions speak louder than words. The fact that they were trying to get Tom Brady while Tua was in-house kind of makes you think maybe the coaching staff and maybe the front office doesn't see Tua quite like we do. And for whatever reason, I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's definitely a popular thing in the league. Traits are everything to these front offices. Jordan Love has traits. That's why you could watch his tape in college and go, man, this guy made bad decisions. His accuracy was off. He was bad pretty much his last year. Now, when you dig into it, new offensive coordinator. I think he had new offensive coordinator 2 years in a row in college, Jordan Love. And but you had the traits. You had the off-platform throws. People forget that he was being comped to Patrick Mahomes coming out of college.
Right.
And I'm going to be honest. I heard that and I rolled my eyes like, what has he done? He hasn't done anything. Now, you watch the second half of that season last year and him throwing off platform, Those
Oh,
are the
yeah.
traits. I don't think Tua has those traits, but what Tua
Yep.
has is quick release, accuracy, and quick processing post snap for the RPO game, meaning one or two key reads, or we handing off, or we throwing the ball here. Who's the ball going to? Ball's out quick. I just don't think that front offices look at that style of quarterback play and go, yeah, let's make him the highest paid quarterback in the game. They do look at a Patrick Mahomes, a Jordan Love, and Aaron Rodgers off schedule type player with all those traits and think, yeah, we'll break the bank for him. So
Right. Yeah, you can't penalize them just for having Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, even Davon Ashane. I think that's how you pronounce the running back's
yeah,
name, and obviously Raheem Mostert. They've got a
phenomenal.
squad over there.
Yeah,
I mean, and Mike McDaniel's kind of running the helm. I'm surprised they haven't won a playoff game yet. I think this year they're going to be coming with a vengeance.
yeah,
They're kind of one of the teams I feel like not many people are talking about, and I think once Tua gets paid, that'll probably change. So the spotlight will be put on them a little bit. But no, that was just interesting. I wanted to bring it up. We'll switch gears here. Kind of another controversial topic, rightfully so. Anders Carlson. Last year had an up and down year. He was a rookie. We obviously drafted him, so that kind of puts the pressure on a little bit more than if we were to sign him as a UDFA or any other form. What do you make of the kicker competition? I know today he went for six for six. He hit from 33, 38, 41, 44, 45, and 46. So not too short, not too long. You got Greg Joseph in house.
mm-hmm.
James, I can't recall his last name. Can you help me out there? The third stringer?
Can't even remember, to be honest
No,
with you.
James, he's out of Michigan. I don't think he's anything serious, but Greg Joseph, Anders Carlson, where are you leaning as far as kicker one here moving into the season?
Yeah, for me, it's Anders Carlson.
Yep.
What's crazy about Anders Carlson's numbers, and I know people will point to the extra points, and for whatever reason, there's a certain group of the fan base that see extra points and think that should be a chip shot. It's no longer a
Right.
chip shot, with the rule change that happened several years ago. But if you actually look at Anders Carlson's accuracy last year and compare it to Mason Crosby's accuracy when he came in the league, I think it wasn't until like year 3 or 4, maybe even longer, before he had a higher field goal make percentage than Anders did last year. So
Yeah.
imagine if in his rookie year, Mason, they just decided, okay, this ain't the guy and cut him. It's ironic that you got Anders Carlson with the Packers and his brother Daniel Carlson. He did the same thing. Michael Lombardi pointed this out, and I didn't realize it. Whoever drafted him or took him, signed him his rookie year, he stunk the joint up. And then lo and behold, he goes back, works on his craft, comes back, and he's one of the best kickers in the game.
I think it was
So
Minnesota, right?
yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Thank
So
goodness.
yeah, exactly. Anders Carlson has got a big leg. I mean, that dude he's got a cannon for a leg. He's got all the leg talent that you're looking for in a kicker. Last year, he missed a bunch of extra points. That's really what it comes down to. So when people said, no, that's not accurate, if you include the extra points with Mason Crosby, I get that argument. But the problem is the majority of Mason Crosby's career, he was kicking, that ball was being snapped from the 2 for extra points, right?
Right.
So totally
Yeah.
different ball game. So yeah, if I had to select one right now, hands down, it's Anders Carlson. This whole Greg Joseph thing, I'm not saying it's a bad move bringing him in. And listen, if he beats Anders and he's kicked more kicks than him in training camp, go with Greg Joseph. I want the best kicker on the team. I'm not emotionally tied to Anders by no stretch of the imagination. But when you look at Greg Joseph's stats last year, it was worse than Anders Carlson's. So it's
Right.
like, to me, I think it's going to take a lot for Anders to lose this job. But again, it looks like him and Daniel, his brother, they went and worked out together. I think they said at Auburn all off season.
Yep.
And when Anders came back in for OTAs, they asked him, and he sounded really confident, hey, we got the problem fixed. So whatever it was specifically, it's like Christian Watson's hamstring. Everybody's like, oh, yep, we fixed the problem. We found it. I'm going, I hope so. But of course, they're not going to come in and go, yeah, guys, I still got that problem. They're not going to say that, right? So,
Homer's in the chat here. 3 kickers in camp since day one. And he's been the best since day one, Carlson. I completely agree. He's getting first reps and everything. Sad thing last year. When Carlson was having a rough training camp, I was up in Green Bay, I think for week 3, watching watching the players come down, and everyone's getting yelled at. I'm trying to, everybody's trying to get autographs, everybody's trying to get pictures. Here comes Anders Carlson kind of walking behind the line of people. No one's saying anything. I sat there and watched him for probably a good 20, 30 seconds. And I'm like, man, how
Yeah.
sad is that?
Right.
He is as disappointed as anybody with how camp went last year, which was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the worst season. He's a rookie kicker. And like you said with his brother, they both started off kind of a little shaky.
Yep.
I think it's his job to lose. And I was listening to Andy Herman earlier today, and he said, I think Anders is for sure going to win the kicking battle, but not convincingly, because the only way that he can convince us that he can make these kicks is by doing it in regular season games, playoff games, consistently. So I think the training camp expectations that even myself kind of set for him to kind of wow me and convince me that he's got the job are probably a little too far fetched. But today was a step in the right direction, going 6 for 6. So I'm excited to see what he's going to be doing the rest of training camp,
Yeah.
preseason games, and I fully expect him to kind of be that kicker rolling into this season.
Yeah, there's Smitty in the chat. He said it wasn't until his 5th year that Mason cracked above 80%. And then he also said Anders hit 81.8% in his first year. And that's the thing, is like, yeah, and when you think 80%, Rob, that's 8 out of 10 kicks.
Right.
I don't think that's a failure. I just don't. And it's a rookie kicker. He's only going to get better, right? You would think so. And here's the other thing too: Rich Bisaccia, the godfather of kicking, right?
Yep.
That dude, if he thinks Anders is the guy, who the heck am I to say, come on, this guy can't? Like, what are we even talking about here, right? So I trust Bisaccia for sure, and I think Anders is going to be fine, man.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can't disagree with Big Rich here.
No.
One last question before I let you go. I know you've been streaming for quite some time. Last year was widely, especially from my perspective, considered what I would call a success as far as the point we reached in the playoffs. Barely losing to the Niners and Santa Clara, and combining that with how young and experienced of a team we had. I'm wondering if you think we're still in that phase, or if anything short of a Super Bowl would be considered a failure. If we made it to the divisional round and lost. Last year, I think it was a huge success. Everybody was pretty happy we made the playoffs. And then winning that Cowboys game was kind of a bonus. I can't say I was happy with the way it ended, but I was surprised and excited, maybe more excited for this upcoming year. Where do you think we're at kind of on the totem pole here? Is it Super Bowl or bust already, or are we kind of right before that? What are you thinking?
It's funny, when we were going into last year, I remember saying on our show over and over and over, the Vegas odds gave us the worst chance of winning the NFC North. Therefore, on the surface, they're saying we're the worst team in the North. We're playing with the house's money. Let's go out and wreck the season for everybody else. And, I kind of said 6 to 10 wins last year is what I predicted. And I know that's very broad, but I wasn't going like, listen to me, guys, we're going to win 6 to 10 games. But it's like, if you're in that range, hey, look, this is a heck of a season, because you got a first-year quarterback, you got the youngest team in the league, and if you can fall somewhere between 6 and 10 wins, what a season. Well, we end up winning 9, made the playoffs, boat raced the Cowboys, which felt so good.
Man, that was crazy.
You need to go watch that post-game show. It should still be up. We played the Dak "Here We Go" soundbite 1,000 times. We trolled the whole game, or the whole post-game show. It was so much fun.
That's one of those rare games where, man, you're sitting pretty at halftime. You're not sweating.
Yep.
I don't think we had one of those all year long. Even that Detroit game the second time around, that should have been a lot more. We should have scored a lot more points that game, but just came up short. Unlike you were doing, like we were saying earlier, 3-4 plays go our way and we win by 20, 30 points. But that wasn't the case. But that Cowboys game, halftime, we're sitting there looking great, and then all of a sudden, starters go out. Things start to kind of turn, and I'm back up on my feet thinking, oh, man, what is happening here? Onside kicks, quick touchdowns. Like, thankfully, they pulled it out. The 49ers game, that was ours, man.
Yeah.
That game was ours.
It was, man. It was tough. But, I went into that 49ers game. I got to be real. I wasn't expecting us to win that game. And it
Yeah.
was just like, let's just keep it close. Let's show
Yeah.
them we can go toe to, and that's what they did, right?
Right.
But yeah, so as far as expectations this year, to answer your question, I've got them somewhere between like 10 to 13 wins.
Okay.
So now if they come out and they only win 8, I don't think it's the end of the world. It probably means you had some key injuries occur and some things kind of go south. But if you come out and make the playoffs again, to me, that's a great year. Again, you got the youngest team in the league. What can you expect, right?
Yep.
And it's going to be something to build off of, and not to bring it back up, but it does kind of tie in together. One of the things that Goody said at his presser about Jordan Love's contract, and this is him putting a little bit of pressure back on Mulugeta and Jordan's camp, was we want to structure it in a way where we can put a good team around him. And that is a real thing. That really does exist. And if you do go with a ton of guaranteed money to where you can't structure it in a way to put a great team around him, then what are we talking about here? What it would suggest is the team, unless you scout really well and you draft really well, is going to take a step back in 2 to 4 years because you got all of this cap tied up with the quarterback. But we all know the salary cap is going to increase significantly every year. So hopefully that's not going to become an excuse. But to answer your question, if they make the playoffs again this year, I don't even need a division. If they make the wild card round, I'm going to be like, hey, another great year. Let's build off this. But all you got to do, man, you know this, Rob. You've been watching Packers football for a long time. You just got to get in the dance, man. You just got to get a shot. If you punch your ticket, anything can happen. We seen that in 2010. What a ride that was, man. That was a blast. They didn't expect us to win in Philly. And then you go into Atlanta, and then you go into Chicago, and it's just like, let's go, man. The president, Chicago, Charles Woodson squashed that out, and next thing you know, we're hoisting the Lombardi. So that's why these people that talk about if you don't win the Super Bowl, it's a failed year. I understand the sentiment there, but at the same time, it's like, give me a team that's always in the hunt, right? As opposed to one that wins a Lombardi and then absolutely stinks up the joint for 6 years. That's a miserable way to fan, right? That's a miserable 5 years in between that Lombardi, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, but I think 10 to 13 wins is what I'm kind of expecting, somewhere in that range if everybody stays significantly healthy. And I think that if you make the playoffs, man, another great year.
Yeah, that's a good perspective to have, and that's a more fun way to fan. I get it. I want to win a Super Bowl every year, and so does it. 31 other teams. That's a lot. That's a comment I get often is, Super Bowl or bust, and I get it. That's the expectation. That's usually what it is year in and year out up at Green Bay. Just kind of the way it is. But the whole 2 in the last 30, 40 years thing, that grows tired on me. And I always just kind of come back and say, that's 2 more than half the franchises combined. Even just Aaron Rodgers' Super Bowl. That's 1 more than half the franchises combined. I think the Patriots and the Chiefs now kind of swaying people on how hard it is to, 1, get to the Super Bowl, 2, win it, and then to do that multiple times. I mean, we were talking about the Dolphins earlier. I don't think they've won a playoff game for 25 years, 23 years.
I don't mean to laugh, but my gosh.
I mean, and like I said, I enjoy watching the Dolphins. I like them, and if we're not playing them, I don't have a problem rooting for them, whatnot. But
yeah,
us Packer fans, we just watched last year and what was supposed to be a rebuild year or a reload year, whatever you want to call it. Youngest team in the NFL, no expectations. The first half, everybody kind of likes to throw away and say that was a bad half, but the first few weeks of the year the first 2 weeks were great. First week against the Bears was great. The skid against the Falcons and a couple other games in there, which I understand Jordan had chances at the end of the game, but he also was the reason we went ahead in most of those games.
Yes,
at the end. And then our defense kind of let up some late scores. I know we all remember Tommy DeVito from the New York Giants. I'm not sure, is he even still employed?
I don't think so. I don't believe he is. So
I mean, he
that
let
was
a
a
game.
fun ride, wasn't it?
That was crazy.
Seeing the agent in the crowd all the time with the hat, it was just like, is this real life right now?
Isn't that nuts? So as I was saying, last year we go out and watch this squad make the playoffs, go on a streak to end the year. Jordan Love's playing, in my opinion, was best quarterback in the NFL, at least over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And not only do they make the playoffs, they go down to Dallas, and Dallas was a good team last year. Dak was playing MVP football, especially in the second half of the season. He was an MVP candidate for most of the season, and we went down there, young team, no expectations, and won a playoff game.
Yep.
And that's something that some fans haven't seen, A, in their lifetime, or two, in 20 plus years. I mean, just think of and I'm not even just harping on the Bears, but the Bears haven't won a playoff game since what, 2010?
Yeah.
And the Jets, I think, are in the same boat, right around that same era in 2010. So I understand the Super Bowl or bust mentality, but calling it a failure and being disappointed, that's kind of where I matured over the years. I think every year, it's especially with Aaron Rodgers, they're spoiled. It's like, okay, this has got to be the year. And when it doesn't happen, it's like, shoot.
Yeah.
But I've kind of just come to enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride. And that's what ends up being, the most enjoyable part about it. Having seen, you like yourself, a Super Bowl win. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing like that, but
Right.
you can't just throw away those years and all the time you spend watching the games, all to be disappointed in the end. So no, that's a good perspective. Anything else you want to touch on, throw in here quick before we call it?
No, man, I think we're good. I'm excited about everything coming up, like we were talking about tonight, man. It's here, Rob. I mean, we got next Thursday is the first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game, and then we got family night 2 nights later, and then the following week the Packers got their first preseason game. It's football season, bro. We made it.
Absolutely. Are you going to be heading up to Green Bay anytime this year?
We already got the Airbnb and everything's set up for the draft, so there's a good chance that the wife and I will be up for a game. I'm one of those weirdos, Rob. I'm down here in Tennessee. That makes us a weirdo, don't get me wrong, but I'm one of those weirdos that likes to fly up on the coldest part of the season and come to a snow game. That's what I love. So there's a good chance we'll pop up there in December, most likely. I got to experience Green Bay like 2 weeks before Christmas, and we went to a little Christmas village downtown, and the snow was flying, and it was colder than a well digger's rear end, bro. It was unbelievable, though. We had so much fun. The people are awesome up there. So, yeah, I was talking to Mandy about that just the other day. We're going to the Titans game in September, the Titans-Packers game. Absolutely. And we'll definitely be up for the draft. But my guess is about halfway through the season, she'll look at me and go, I got to go to Green Bay. And whatever she says goes. So that's the way it goes. So look for us probably in December, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you got yourself a keeper, man. That's awesome. And a snow game, you can't go wrong with a snow game.
Yeah.
So
definitely, man.
All right. Well, let's get out of here. That's going to do it for Clayton and I. Be sure to subscribe to Packers Total Access on YouTube. They've been putting out some great content for quite some time now. I've included the link below to their channel. It's in the description of this video. Hit the subscribe button. I can personally guarantee you that you won't regret it. Thanks again, everybody. As for Clayton and I, have a great night, and we'll catch you guys later.
See you.